suppose that 100 items, what can happen is if your data changes, do you want 300 rows of data updating, 300 views updating? Well, answer no, because that is laggy, particularly on mobile devices where you've got, if the main thread locks up, then the user has to wait and they'll get frustrated. And we all know, if a user gets frustrated with you, we all know from ourselves, if the app freezes up and doesn't do anything, then it's like, close the app and I'll go find another one. You know, there's a million apps these days. So in that case, should component update allows you to return true or false, and you can check the state and props within your component to decide whether it should actually update. So it allows you to optimize the rendering of the components to optimize the UX in the app. And component will unmount allows you to clean up anything, maybe any event listeners or subscriptions you've got happening in the component. Timers, for example. The React Native team, Facebook say that when they started developing React Native, they found a lot of crashes were the result of set timeout. Set timeout was called, and the component unmounts, the whole thing goes down. So there is a GitHub project called React Native Timer that lets you now listen and sort of register the listener and remove the listener for all these sort of JavaScript set timeout, etc. Okay, so I wasn't entirely honest with you. There is some Drupal in this talk. And actually, if you saw Mike's talk yesterday about Takedo, great project, I thoroughly recommend that you try it out for getting set up with Drupal. It makes it very, very easy. So, to set up, and the Amazing crew out there, they're the ones who have built this Drupal GraphQL module. And this is, I mean, pretty much all the steps you need to do to get going with it. And in the end, once you've got up and running, you'll get this great Explorer where you can test your GraphQL queries. And I suppose, who knows what GraphQL is? Most of you. Okay, it's another Facebook project. Instead of having multiple endpoints for your REST API, you have one, and the front-end dev just writes a query for the data they want in the structure they want to have it, and it gives it to you. I don't know, there's some sort of black magic involved, voodoo or something. I don't really understand it, but it's a pretty cool way of approaching APIs, in my opinion. Okay, and then I was going to show you. Just give me a sec to show you the live demo. That's really small, isn't it? Stuck this together just recently, but here's Xcode with the GQL demo project. appdelegate.m is what launches the app in iOS, and then you can see some libraries down here that most of them are just built-in libraries for React Native, and hopefully when I press play we should run. Yeah, there we go, okay. Okay. Oh, hang on. Oh no, the Wi-Fi is not working too well for me here, so let me just hotspot that. So if you ever need a red light when you're developing React Native, all you have to do is start up your phone and you'll be able to find stuff with your red torch. Okay, try that again.
Oh, of course it does that. Oh no, hang on. Waiting. Okay, while that's doing that, we'll bounce on over and have a look at the code for this app. So, oh, come on. So it's basically just a 2-page app, this one. Is that visible to everyone? Need bigger font? Okay, so this URL is just like a mock-up of a GraphQL endpoint. We'll just pretend that's Drupal with GraphQL for the example. We're defining our component app, our class app. It's got a render function here. And Apollo is the tool that allows you to build GraphQL queries and execute them, get the data. The other thing we've got in here is a good project called React Navigation, which despite its name is only for React Native. I think they have plans to make it more general, so it will be React for the web. And we're building what's known as a stack navigator. So that's when the screens slide over the top of each other. And you can also do tab navigators where you've got a tab at the bottom or the top, and then the pages will transition within. And here we've got some basic styles. So this has got, starting off with list, and it is, here we've got GQL from GraphQL tag and the query from React Apollo. We're constructing our query. Then in our render, we've got the query component wrapping the rest of it. So when we've got a response, response.loading will say true or false. If we try and render it, we'll get the red screen that you saw just before if there's no data. And then activity indicators, the commonly known as the throbber, the spinner. And then when we actually have a response and it has a length, has some items in it, then we're going to render flat list. So flat list is like a list view, but the first iteration of React Native, the list view, had a few memory problems where the memory could always just keep going up for very long lists. A flat list is a more optimized version. So any cells that are off the page, off the screen, they get cleared from memory. Anyway, this is finally, and then when someone touches that, we're using touchable opacity. So one of the things, like if you build an app in Cordova, which is another meant to be cross-platform app development tool, it's actually running within Safari WebView. So it's not actually giving the native feel. It sort of mocks up the native feel of apps. Whereas with React Native, it actually is using the native components under the hood. So it gives that native feel. When you touch a button, it should change opacity or change appearance in response to that. And that's what touchable opacity gives you. And then, like on the web, on click, or in this case, on press, we can execute a function, which is to navigate and pass through the data. And that goes through to details, which at the moment is just showing the name and the price. So hopefully this should be running now. So let's go give that another look. There we are. There's our list of products. And you can see I'm debugging here. There was true and false was loading. And then we end up with our list of data here, which we feed into flat list. And if we click on one of them, we get the price. Incredible concrete salad, bargain at $363. Buy now. Actually, that button doesn't work, doesn't go anywhere. So I'm pretty close to the end of my talk. I just wanted to say that, as I mentioned, we did launch Hoopy about a week and a half ago. And if you want to check it out, if you want to download it, please do. Have a try. 15-second looping video creation app. built in React Native. So does anyone have any questions? Yeah.
You were talking about how things like Cordova and stuff will use web views and compared to React Native. So you're using CSS objects sort of thing in there? Just wondering how that's possible. Like, what's the process of converting that into a native layout? If that's
My short answer is I don't know, actually.
okay.
Yeah, I haven't looked into the code. It just kind of works. So I do know that it is very finicky, and not every single permutation of CSS has been implemented, and so it's kind of a unique sort of subset of CSS. But the one thing about it is React Native uses Flexbox, and you know it's just going to work. You actually are not dealing with cross-browser incompatibilities in CSS because it's like a walled garden. In the same way, fetch is used, but you know you can't use fetch in IE11, and you don't have to worry about this transpiling or these, what are they called when you have to mock up a certain new JavaScript function for an older browser. You don't have to worry about any of that because it's a closed environment and you know it's going to run, basically. So it has some advantages in cognitive load for developers in that regard.
So it's a native app written in JavaScript. So once that's compiled, I mean, like native apps, say for iOS, it's like Objective-C or Swift code. So what actually runs in JavaScript, or is it converted like to Swift or something like that?
That's a great question. It's the same JavaScript compiler that runs in Safari on the phone, or the equivalent of whatever happens in the browser in Android. So it has to conform to whatever that runtime is. And Apple does have guidelines around this, and that's how Codepush is legal, but according to their terms of use. But some developers do get caught out with it. So there's a bridge from the JavaScript runtime and passes information, data across into the native components. So under the hood for the video in this app, it's actually, I forget the library, whatever, NS, audio-visual, actual library that runs in Objective-C, that's what's running the video. And we just pass, say for when we're compositing videos, multiple clips into one, and just passing an array of the clips with the whatever relevant metadata or data, and then within the Objective-C takes that, slams them together, outputs a file, and then we can play that file. Yeah, so it can get a bit complex and messy, and there are lots of implementational finicky details, and different libraries have different ways of dealing with it, but that's the core of it. There's the bridge, and we're passing data back and forth from JavaScript to the native components. And there can be performance issues with that if in certain situations. There was a bug where if you passed over 100,000 characters of text across that bridge, it would just go down. And we discovered this, things like there's a library to get all your iTunes tracks. Now, it'll pass you the image, but as a base 64 string. And then I was saving that into to save to disk, you can do async storage, which just writes a text file basically. But beyond us, we had people, when they said, well, every time I touch that button, the app crashes. And I was like, well, it took quite a while to find out why from the crash reports. From Bugsnag, which is a great crash reporting tool, eventually it was like, it's this bug with the passing 100,000 characters over the bridge would just cause it to go down. That's very frustrating. But so then, we've got to save that to an actual file and just save the file name, and that solved that problem. Yeah.
How does it compare in general in terms of performance to native?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty close to native. Yeah.
Great talk, by the way.
Thank you.
I like the Drupal bit. It was really good. For an organisation who doesn't have capability in this space and they want to, I guess, select a framework or a platform, what advice can you give around selection? I mean, when we're thinking about, React Native versus Cordova, and then think about front-end frameworks as well, so looking at, React.js or Vue or Angular, or is there a good argument that React.js and React Native are quite close, and so that's a direction to take? Or
I would think so. Microsoft actually has a project that attempts to be able to write it once, and it will do both web and mobile, but then it's got a subset of features for React Native. So you're then also waiting for them to catch up with the development as React Native goes ahead. This difference with divs and views, and also the way CSS is managed between React and React Native, will have an effect on developer time spent adapting one to the other, but I would expect that it will be quicker to adapt from React for the web to React Native than it would be for Vue to Android and iOS. So your choice is, do we build a native iOS app and a native Android app? Or do we build Cordova, or I think there's Xamarin as well, which Microsoft has. I don't have a hard answer. I mean, I think everything has to be weighed on its merits, but yeah.